Hey everybody, Elizabeth Nader back with you again, Jersey First TV. We are talking today about school choice, and I want to welcome Jenny Clark to the show from loveyourschool.org. Jenny, so glad to have you here.
Thanks, Elizabeth. So glad to be here today.
I love your organization. I love your energy. I love everything you do. And right now, everyone watching is saying, wait a minute, I haven't seen her before in New Jersey. No, you haven't, because she hails from the great state of Arizona, where they have school choice. And as a result, she started this incredible organization that she has. So, Jenny, we're going to dig into school choice and why it's so important. But I do want people to understand a little bit more about yourself, besides being a mother of 5, which in itself is incredibly important and relevant to this conversation.
Sure.
As a result of what Arizona has to offer out there in terms of school choice, you started Love Your School. Can you tell us about it?
Yeah, absolutely. So born and raised in Arizona, grew up here, went to Arizona public schools, kindergarten through 12th grade. As you said, I've got 5 kids, and never did I imagine that my kids would need something different than what I had growing up. But that was the case. 2 of my oldest boys had some learning disabilities, dyslexia, dysgraphia, along with some other different challenges. And we were faced with the reality that the locally zoned school for us, unfortunately, did not have the right therapy for our kids so that they could thrive in that educational environment. So we were so lucky that in Arizona, we have the Empowerment Scholarship Account Program, better known as ESA. Across the United States, they're called Education Savings Accounts. And our family was able to access one of those ESAs so that we could pay for tutors and therapy, private school if we needed for our kids. I didn't know about that program. My kids qualified years earlier. And when I discovered that, I thought, we need to start an organization to help families find out about these programs, find out about their school options, and learn how to access them. And that's why we started Love Your School.
I love it. That's incredible. And of course, you're operating in Arizona, but you're well connected with the school choice movement across the country, which is why we wanted to have you on to talk about why it's so important. So we're going to step back at a high level right now, because you're talking to a state that sadly doesn't have a lot in the realm of school choice. And we want to talk about the issue in general. First of all, what is it really, Jenny? What is school choice?
School choice is the idea that we should fund students and not systems, that the money should follow the child wherever that child needs to be in order to thrive. Okay, so that's the fundamental kind of like big picture idea. I think when most people hear that, they think, yeah, that makes sense. I mean, if you open enroll your child in between public schools, right? You leave one for whatever reason, you go to another, the money follows your child into that situation. So why not allow families to access different education options, and the money should follow them, even if that option happens to be a private school, a learning pod, a micropod, an online school, whatever it is, the money should follow the child. And of course, these last 2 years, we've seen some pretty significant and exciting programs all across the United States either expand or launch for the first time. One of those is the incredible Hope Scholarship Program in West Virginia. 98% of families in West Virginia are eligible for this scholarship, and the families can take the education dollars and put them wherever their child needs to be, where they think their child needs to be. It's pretty amazing.
Well, school choice has been out there as an issue. It's become politicized, of course, over the years. But now, as you say, in the last 2 years, COVID has put a spotlight back on this. There are a lot of parents in New Jersey who are frustrated with the choices their schools have made regarding opening, not opening, what's going on in the school, the learning loss. We can talk about that as well. So I think this issue now is back, front and center. So this is school choice really is the ability to choose any of those options, including homeschooling. I want to put that in there too, because your movement really supports the fact that schooling can be a valid choice for a child who needs that. And isn't this about how your child learns best?
It's absolutely about how your child learns best. And we do support homeschooling at Love Your School. And I think all the different organizations that are out there, talking about school choice, talking about the money following the child, talking about parents knowing what's best for their children always and nobody else. We can freely and openly support all of those options because we trust parents, right? So at Love Your School, we say district, charter, private, online, homeschool, micro school, ESA, whatever it is, we trust you as a parent to decide what's best for your child. I don't think that some of those groups and organizations that you mentioned that maybe don't support school choice can honestly always say that. There is a mindset of, no, we have a system over here, and
Yeah.
this system is what's best for everyone's children. But as parents, we know that's not the case. We know our kids are unique. We know they have different challenges, skills, abilities, and gifts. And so school choice really celebrates that. And we don't care what you choose. We're choice agnostic. We
Yeah.
just want you to have the choice.
I love that. So part of what I mentioned before is this becoming politicized has really been a struggle because it's no longer been a conversation about what's best for a child. It's really become different groups that are stakeholders that have a say in where this goes for whatever reason. We have a very strong teachers union in New Jersey that certainly has worked against school choice. So from a political standpoint, which is not always a fun conversation, can you tell the audience why this has become politicized so heavily from your viewpoint? What really are the underlying motivations, if you will, for the differing viewpoints?
Yeah, I mean, that's a hard one. I'm sure there's scholars that have been, engaging in this, politicians, pundits that know far more on this subject than I do. But I will speak as a parent. From my perspective, I think there's a fundamental lack of trust in the family to make those decisions. So ultimately, whether it's school closures or whether it's masks or whether it's, this reading program versus this reading program, ultimately parents need to have options. They need to have choices, and they need to be able to say, I'm totally fine, for example, if your child wants to wear a mask. But for me and my family, that's not going to work out for a variety of different reasons. And they need to have those options. I think parents were frustrated when they weren't given those choices. It was no in-person learning, not one or the other. It was you have to wear a mask, not one or the other. And that is why we've seen parents across the political spectrum. I work with these families every single day, Democrat, Republican, and everything in between. All they want is to be heard, and they want to have choices for their family. So, I sometimes wonder what the heart is of the opposition to that message, because I think it's a beautiful message, and I really can't quite figure it out.
Well, it's growing again, right? I mean, we saw the election in Virginia, which was really this fall, which was really all about the parents' voice when you look at it. And already the new governor put in some executive orders to address that. We also saw recently in Michigan, the Democrat Party there came out with a since deleted tweet about how it's not your choice, parents, on what we teach your children. And so it's become this interesting scenario where it's the interest of the government versus the interest of the parents. I like the way you position it, because I'm not sure who can argue against parents knowing best and those that want to be engaged for their children. So we really have two things going on here. We have a child that would do better in a different environment for the reasons that you mentioned, and you have children like that. Is this not also a way for us to improve urban areas and the minority communities who have suffered with less than stellar public education? Doesn't school choice help them?
It absolutely helps them. And Arizona is a great example of that. I mean, we have DNF school districts in Arizona. Those families are actually eligible in our state for the empowerment scholarship that allows them to take their funding into a different educational environment. And so our perspective, it's not either or, it's both and, right? Let's continue to do all the different things that need to be done to improve and make our public schools these beautiful, wonderful, places that they can be. But while that's happening, students shouldn't be suffering, right? Mm-hmm. So those families in the meantime should have a choice to go somewhere else. And right now, in so many states, I mean, we talked before, in New York, in New Jersey, Connecticut, so many states, families don't even have that option. So we need to give families that option, especially now because of COVID. You mentioned learning loss earlier. I mean, that's on everyone's mind. We're all waiting. We're looking at the research. We're looking at the data of how far kids are behind in which ages and grade levels and all of these things. Well, now is the time. Now is the time to say, okay, learning loss, these things are happening. You know what? There's a school or a group or an organization over here, and they may be better equipped for my child to catch my child up to where they need to be. So I need to take my funding somewhere else so I can do that. The crazy thing is that doesn't mean those families aren't going to go return to whatever environment it is that they were at in the first place, because we know that so many families love our public school system. I looked at a few stats before we got on here, just as a reminder to myself, and there's been so many studies out there that have been done. The empirical evidence is crazy on the public school benefits of school choice. And in 22 out of 23 studies that were done on that issue, how is education improved for the public school students when a state has educational options, things like education savings accounts, vouchers, those
Right.
types of things. And
Right.
22 out of 23 studies found net positive benefit. That's crazy. And it really flies in face of the narrative that we hear that children are somehow harmed that are left at the public school if other children leave and vice versa. So the research just time and again supports school choice, supports this idea that money should follow the child.
Is part of that because the public school then has to step up a little bit when they look at the fact that that parents have options, that they can take their funding elsewhere? Does that not create almost sort of a capitalistic environment where schools have to compete? Is that part of it? Is that the reason why we think the public schools begin to step up in a school choice, a true school choice environment?
I think that's certainly part of it. I think sometimes too, maybe it's an impact on class size. I mean, each one of those studies can dig deeper into that. But of course, I mean, from a pure economic perspective, right? Supply and demand. It's like if
Yeah.
students are leaving and demanding and families are demanding location somewhere, something else, the supply or the desire to improve what one is offering to attract those same families would of course shift and change. So that's definitely part of it.
Well, in New Jersey, as you know, we don't really have true school choice. We do have the ability to, of course, choose a private school, but you have to pay for it. You do right now have the ability to homeschool. There are some charter schools that, have been started. And then there's an intra-district trading, if you will, where you can port your child with the tax dollars to a different public school. What I have found is that that's not well publicized. People don't understand it. And it's not really a situation where there is a lot of choice there. So we don't really have true school choice in New Jersey, which is something we want to start talking about. As you look at the country, you've done it well in Arizona. You guys have fought legislatively to make this happen. Where else, you mentioned West Virginia, where else in the United States are we seeing gains in the area of school choice?
Well, there's some really exciting kind of chatter and things happening in Ohio and also in Michigan. And again, states, even like West Virginia, that 2 years prior, nothing was able to get through. All of a sudden, they have one of the most expansive programs, is pretty significant. And it shows a shift in what people are willing to say children actually need. States recognizing this is actually better for our families and for our children. So I hope to see some of those new states, some of those states that I mentioned grow or add to their school choice programs. I think Ohio's is calling it a little bit of a backpack funding type bill, which, different people support or don't support, but the details of that are getting hashed out. Michigan as well had passed something and then, it was vetoed. So we'll see what happens in some of those other states. But I'm excited to see, because I think school choice makes sense. I think it's a winning issue. Like you mentioned, we saw in Virginia. I think families are saying, hey, I love my public school.
Right.
And there might be an option for one of my children. And I shouldn't have to be wealthy in order for my child to be in the education environment that works for them. My income and my zip code should not determine the type of education that my child should get. I certainly believe that to be true. I think most people would believe that to be true. So let's give those families choices. The wealthy already have school choice. The wealthy can already send their children to a private school, or if you're zoned, and you live in a certain district, you're already getting a great education environment.
Yeah.
It's the middle class, it's the low income families, like you mentioned, it's our rural families. They're the ones that really suffer when we don't have school options. And so my hope is that more and more people will see that and believe in that and work to advance education freedom in their own state. And as a side note, Love Your School would love to come into New Jersey and help families know even about your existing programs or new programs. So keep that in mind.
How do we do that? I mean, by the way, I failed to mention this in the beginning. One of the reasons we're talking now is next week is National School Choice Week, which is a big celebration for you and others in the movement. But how do you get started in other states? What does that look like, Jenny?
That's a great question. Well, just like we got started here, and that is with parents. It just takes one parent that I can connect with in a state. And that's kind of what we're doing in West Virginia too, and a few other states that we're looking at, that says, you know what? I agree with that. I want education freedom and school options and school choice in my state. So my email is going to be up here. Our website is going to be up here. And it's as simple as reach out to me. I want to connect with you. I want to talk about what it could look like to launch a parent-led movement in your own state, and do what we've done in Arizona in just 2 short years. We could be doing it all across the country with Love Your School.
Incredibly exciting. And as you talk about school choice, I want to remind everybody it's about the dollars following the child, because as you said, the wealthy can already make these decisions. We don't have true fair school choice. And when those tax dollars follow your child, the decisions you've been able to make according to which of your children need what kind of help, for the most part, financially, you've been covered for that, right?
Yes, absolutely. So in our case, in Arizona, the ESA program we have here, it actually saves our state millions of dollars. And that's another reason why I love being on that program, because the amount of money that the average student on an ESA in Arizona gets is around $6,500. Our per pupil spending in the public school is closer to $10,500. So every family that goes on an ESA essentially says, I'm doing more for my child with less dollars, but it's what my child actually needs. So there's a benefit there, but then there's also a savings to the state. And that's what's really beautiful about a lot of these programs too, is that the way that they're designed, they actually save the state money. So, we're very happy with the amount of money that we have. We've been able to do so many incredible things for our kids, whether it's dyslexia tutoring, handwriting therapy, speech therapy, curriculum that's specialized for our kids. You name it, we've been able to do that and provide that for our kids. And especially when we're talking about during COVID, when schools were shutting down, we were so thankful that we had an ESA, because a lot of our tutors and therapists said, hey, we don't mind coming to your house and doing this tutoring one-on-one. Or we're already set up to do Zoom for your executive functioning class for your kid, or whatever it is. So our kids struggled less during that season. And we want that for every family. We want that option, that choice for every family that needs it.
What about teachers? I look at teachers much differently than I do the teachers union, especially in New Jersey. We love teachers. How do teachers normally react to this? Are they supportive as a group to school choice? And again, I'm not talking about the union. I'm talking about the individual teachers.
Yes, they are. And you know what is so fantastic about that in Arizona is that in Arizona, we have hundreds of different vendors that provide these different services for families. And a huge percentage of those vendors are teachers. They're public school teachers in our state that maybe in the summer, or they'll take on one student during the week, say, hey, I love doing what I'm doing, and I've got a specialized skill or gift or ability or a heart for these particular types of students. I'm going to become a vendor, and I'm going to serve these ESA students in addition to whatever job it is that they're doing that they already love. So we love seeing that. We have a great Facebook group that we allow those teachers and those vendors to network in. And I think it was just 2 days ago, I saw a teacher post saying, hey, I'm a music teacher, in this particular school. I love what I'm doing, and I want to offer some classes to you ESA families. So when I see that, it really encourages me, and it kind of blows my mind and shifts the narrative where you think that teachers don't support these types of programs. They absolutely do. And in Arizona, many of them are actually serving these students.
Oh, wow. That's so impressive. And it's more opportunity for them. It's more of a chance for them to use their skill set. And so in general, would you say Arizona has been a success? And have you had anybody pushing back against it, even legislatively?
Yeah, Arizona has been an absolute success. I mean, we do have several legislators that have pushed back over the last few years, not wanting these programs to be advanced, not wanting more families to have access to these programs. And that's really unfortunate and, quite frankly, very devastating. Just a year or so ago, there was a legislation to advance Arizona's ESA program to low-income families. That's not currently one of our qualifying categories right now. It's, military families, special need, school kids. And that was stopped in our legislature. And when you think about COVID and you think about what we talked about, that there are families with means, wealthy families already have access to school choice, but our low income families don't in the same way. It's really unfortunate that anybody would not want to open up these programs to low income families. So, I mean, I'm hopeful in the future that we will see more of that, because I think that those families deserve choice as well.
Well, we want this in New Jersey. We do. So many of us do. And I think the more people become educated about what it really means, like this interview, and really going to your website is incredible because you see how you serve the community and help them understand all of their choices rather than what happens in New Jersey, which you think, I have no choice. It's just public school and it's my zip code, as you say. And so there's a lot of opportunity here. So as people are listening to this, and you and I are going to talk again, they can come to your website. If there's someone in New Jersey who feels like, all right, I totally get this. This is my thing I want to fight for. Because I have to tell you, Jenny, we have been showing up at Board of Education. We have been running for these positions. We have been screaming from the rooftops about our kids. This is another avenue and outlet for people who care about the future of the next generation and the options in this state. And frankly, it enriches the state for us to enrich our children. So this is another way for them to get this moving, a parent-led movement. So they should reach out to you. And what's the best way to do that?
Yes, well, visiting our website or also just sending me an email. Our email is hello@loveyourschool.org. Of course, we're on all the social media platforms. You can visit us on Twitter and on Instagram, but just shooting me an email and then let's start that conversation. Let's, hop on a phone, hop on a Zoom and talk more about what, you as a parent might be wanting to do in New Jersey. And let's take that momentum and do something with it. Because as you said, you've got some choice there, but not the type of choice that so many of these other states have. So you should have it. New Jersey families deserve to have options like so many other states have. And all it takes is a few parents coming together. And I love that you mentioned too, that you guys are going to school board meetings and state board of ed meetings. You're absolutely right. We need it all. And different people feel led to engage in different ways. So I always say to families, hey, I'm over here helping individual families access their school options and helping them know more about the programs that are available. But I love that there's other, parents out there that are going to school board meetings, that are going to these meetings and doing those types of things. There's room for everybody. And my hope is that there'll be some families in New Jersey that say, hey, that Love Your School thing sounds like the thing for me. I want to learn more about that because we'd love to connect with you.
Well, you've got the most amazing story, and it's the one that we love, which is the mom who said, I'm fighting for my kids. And out of that grew what you're doing now. And that is the perfect kind of activism, if you will, one that's done from the heart and really to help and fight for the kids. And if anything, COVID has only really exasperated, underscored, and highlighted the need for us to do this. So I think we're ready, Jenny, and I'm sensing someone watching that's going to reach out. And if not, I know who few people I'm going to reach out to and say, you need to call Jenny. Because we need this out here. We're going to have you back because we're going to educate more and more on school choice. There's a lot under the cover that we can dig into, how you guys are doing in Arizona, how it really works to port your money, the different choices, especially when it comes to special needs and all of that, which is another area that we're talking about, and special need kids are hurting. So we all need to realize that's an area that we need to solve as well. So Jenny, there's a lot more to come. I want to thank you for bringing your intelligence to us. Thank you for everything you're doing. And I'm hoping we're going to see you here out in New Jersey soon.
Me too. Thank you so much for having me, Elizabeth.
We'll talk to you soon. And to my